Hello and welcome to the weekly Go Narrative stream. We're actually back after a little bit of a hiatus over the holidays, which was then promptly followed by my entire family coming down with COVID. Oh, joy of joys. No matter how careful you are, it seems to be Omicron is getting us left, right, and center. We had the joy of our eldest bringing it home from middle school. So there is that aspect. We've got a really fun show for you today. We are going to be having a conversation with Jeff Leitowitz, and we're going to be talking about some really innovative storytelling that includes a whole bunch of elements of storytelling and a whole bunch of different mediums or media, if you will. As we all know, storytelling is about connecting people and business is about connecting people to products. So we all know that storytelling is a big part of business. You've heard me talk a lot about the frameworks and the approaches that we use with storytelling for action. And storytelling for action's big differentiator is we don't want you to have to worry about Hollywood and the hero's journey. We recognize the power of storytelling just like you. And we have spent the past decade building a way for you to tap into that power and to use that power every day in your job. And things are really exciting today because Jeff and I are going to be having a conversation about this storytelling and about this this kind of new approach, if you will, to storytelling. I'm super excited that Jeff is on the Go Narrative crew. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring Jeff into the room and we're going to say good morning to Jeff. Jeff, good morning.
Hello, Matt. How's it going?
Very well, thank you. We're both heralding from the wonderful Pacific Northwest here, and I'm super excited because we're actually getting to have a conversation that other people can listen to. You and I have had a lot of fascinating conversations ourselves. First of all, though, musician. People might be thinking, what on earth are we talking about music for when it comes to storytelling? Before we do that, though, I want to kind of dig back into your past a little bit, and I want to hear about your musical experiences. And in fact, I'd love to hear about your first musical experience. What musical experience really has stuck with you over the years? That's a big part of who Jeff is. We'd love to hear about that. Tell us about that, Jeff.
Absolutely. So my first really amazing musical experience happened when I was just a kid, maybe 8 years old or so, at summer camp in Pennsylvania. Went to a sleepaway camp. Every night after dinner, there would be free time where the kids would just sort of run amok. And there was an empty cabin this one summer. This is like the late 70s. So this counselor brought over a drum kit, a big stereo, and a couple boxes, milk crates of the current records at the time. And this is classic rock as it was happening. Zeppelin, Billy Joel, Bowie, like all this great stuff. Anyway, I would sit outside under this tree and listen to this guy play drums to these songs, from outside the cabin. The sun was going down, the fireflies were coming up. And I was just entranced by this. It was like this magical thunder. And then one day, this guy kind of steps out onto the porch and he's like, "Hey, kid, come here." I'm like, "Wait, what?" He's like, "You want to come in and check this out?" So I went in to this cabin and this guy put on the Who song. I still remember the song, "Won't Get Fooled Again." Right? You know that one? It's a major rocker. And this guy's just banging the crap out of these drums, and my little 8-year-old heart explodes. I'm like, something is up with these tunes. And that was kind of set me on course for the rest of my life, really.
Wow, that's not only is that a musical experience, there's quite the story about the musical experience. Talking about the sun setting and what you were feeling and your explosion of energy that you went through with that. That to me speaks about music being very important to you, Jeff. I think that's safe to say, right?
That is very safe to say, yes.
And it's more than just important to you, isn't it? It's important to everybody. But why? Why is music so important? What's the big deal?
Well, music is an interesting medium. It's a different kind of communication than words or images, because music really works on an emotional level, right? You can listen to a song in another language, and sure, you won't get the specifics of the lyrics, but you'll get the vibe, right? So the music carries a certain energy and communicates a certain mood or emotion. That's why music is so important in everything, in really all visual media. You know, I kind of dare you to find a movie or a TV show or a commercial or something like that without music in it, because it's a powerful mechanism to transmit emotion, and emotion is really one of the key ways that we communicate.
I think that's absolutely fascinating that you said that about different languages. I literally, within the past week, saw a clip of this video from the 1970s, an Italian artist, and I can't remember his name. As we keep talking here, I'll have to kind of go and poke around, see if I can find it in the background. It completely, just kind of jump to mind. So this guy was a bit frustrated because he felt like Italians were getting really into American music, even though they didn't understand the lyrics. And it kind of rubbed him the wrong way for some reason. And as a joke, I guess you could say it was a joke, but there was quite a production around this. He actually wrote a song and produced a music video with what sounds like American English words, but is pure nonsense.
Classic.
And it ended up being a massive hit. So you're hitting the nail on the head there, right? There's something about that. There's something we draw from them. I've many a time sitting on the sofa with my wife, with my kids, and talking about the power that we're experiencing from the music in a movie that we're watching. It's almost like it's, to your point about emotion, it's almost like liquid emotion that's just kind of being injected into our brains. So, you know, what is it about music that is so emotional? What's special about music? What's different about music? Why is this such a big deal when it comes to music?
Why does music do what it does? Why does it have that magic to it? I don't know, but it does. And I don't even know if we need to know why or how it works. But what we do know is it does work, and it works in every culture, and it works throughout time and in all history. Whether you're banging drums, you know, somewhere, or you know, playing a wood flute or doing electronic music, right? It's all parts of time and culture and mood and energy, and all this comes together, and it definitely communicates a vibe. It's because Perhaps it's because music is really energy, right? The sound wave is energy, right? So we pick up on that, whereas we look at something or we intellectualize something when we read it, or you know, try to hear it, you know, in terms of words. Music itself is really just that connection in an almost, you know, ethereal or ephemeral way.
Yeah, it's really fascinating when the emotional angle here of music versus the sort of the rational of what you're talking about. And in fact, it's funny. I shared this screen real quick here. So this is actually something we find ourselves talking about a lot, right? And you've heard me talk about this. I've got another graphic somewhere that's got the cerebral cortex on the outside, you know, the front, the neocortex at the front, the limbic brain in the center. But we talk about stories as being a way of triggering that limbic brain, triggering the emotions, right? And story structure itself actually lives in the neocortex, because that's where structure exists. But a big part of stories is that ability to reach into the brain and press the buttons that create those kind of triggers. And so everything you're saying about the the music and the music's ability to reach in and press those buttons, whether it's the sound waves or something else, clearly has a strong connection to storytelling, and is therefore not surprising that my wife and I end up having this conversation frequently about music. Have you seen The Expanse? the sci-fi show The Expanse, Jeff?
I have not seen that now.
So if you have any interest in science fiction, even a passing interest, I would recommend going and checking out The Expanse. A little bit of a slow burn to start off with, but some of the absolute best science fiction that's been on TV in the past 2 decades. Battlestar Galactica, I think, would be another one that's up there. But one of the things that really struck me about The Expanse is the music. And whether it's sound design or music design, intentionally using the medium, intentionally using the power. It's another quiver in our bow. The ability to press those emotional buttons. In fact, to the point where I can listen to the soundtrack of The Expanse, in particular certain tracks, and I'm transported back to those episodes. And I realize that when I'm watching these episodes, the music actually, in many cases, will melt into the background. Sometimes I'm aware of it, but many cases it melts into the background. And so when I listen to the music on its own without the visuals, I'm reminded of that power. I'm reminded of the cadence of the forward motion that the music is helping bring to those scenes. So obviously a great example of how the visual storytelling, the stories that are being told, and the music all coming together. And obviously we've got something that we're going to share with everybody today that's also doing that as well. But do you have any kind of examples of that, of the sort of the confluence of the storytelling, the visuals, the music, that you think is really powerful, or does a really good job?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's everywhere and it's different for different people, right? But one of the points that you said there, which I think is so powerful and important, for people to remember, is when music creates an experience, we remember the experience, right? And that's really what we're trying to do here. Create an experience that then can be remembered. So let's exactly see, you got the graphic and everything.
Experience.
So let's take a classic movie, from our generation, which is like The Breakfast Club. Okay? Don't you forget about me. I dare anyone who grew up in the 80s to hear that song and not remember that time. Remember, that piece of our youth, right? Because the song connects, in this case, to a film or to the radio, or, your cassette tape, I suppose, or record. And then immediately transports us back to that. Right. So
it's
that
almost
is
like all those connections, right? All the neurons that are there. Kind of like, also like smell, right? You have that smell, you smell something and it just cuts right through, and you just have that moment of memory. But music, absolutely. I could hear that song playing in my head as you talked about it. As you were talking about it, it was somehow also playing in my head. What is that all about?
Well, I mean, we just make these connections that, you saw the movie, you heard the song on the radio, you felt the power of youth and the connection to the stories in that film. And now, just simply the mention of it triggers you back into that, right? So what a powerful thing that we can do, using music, using story in these kinds of videos, these kinds of communications.
Yeah, I like the fact that you mentioned feelings there. It's something I found myself. In fact, when I first started to get into storytelling professionally from a business perspective, which was pushing on actually it was a decade. It was 2012. I was hired as chief storyteller for Microsoft Dynamics, and one of the first things that I helped was working with the organization to help them understand and to take them on the journey was you make decisions based on your heart and you justify based on your head. I mean,
exactly.
anybody that's ever lusted after that latest fancy camera or that sports car or that vacation to that beautiful tropical island has gone through that experience, right? And we've all done it. It's that feeling. You have that feeling, I want this thing, right? And then you start to figure out, like, can I afford it? How do I get it? How do I justify this? How do I take my spouse on the journey with this? But it's about that feeling, right? And if you don't feel something, how on earth are you going to engage with it? Like if we think about anybody who's watching the stream or the recording, if you think about your company, think about your products, right? Think about your customers. Now think you've got customer A, you've got customer B. Customer A is incredibly passionate about the topic that you help solve for, the problem that you help solve for, and even potentially about your product. But there's emotion there. They're engaged, right? That's person A. Person B doesn't give a flying F. Right? Which one of these two, customer A or customer B, answers on a postcard, please. Which one are you going to have more success engaging with? And it's obviously it's customer A, right? So then the question becomes, what can you do to get customer B to feel something? Because if they don't feel something, they're never going to do something. It's really all about change, right? Whether we're going to the dollar store, or it's now going to be what, the $1.25 store, I hear, and you're spending $1 on something, or you're spending $1 million on something, right? You work in the shipping industry and you have to make a massive investment in some new hull repairs or some new navigation system. Like, if you don't feel like that's the right thing to do, are you going to do it? And it doesn't matter how much the investment is if you don't value it. If you don't feel it, you don't value it. If you don't value it, you will not part with your hard-earned cash. So I'm super excited for sharing what we've got to reveal today. But before we do that, what kind of music turns you on, Jeff?
Well, I mean, there's various genres. You know, I love some genres of electronic music, singer-songwriter stuff, of course, like classic rock, new wave, synth poppy stuff like that, all kinds of stuff. But and then you got Motown and punk. I mean, there's tons. But really, what turns me on about music is music that is authentic and true, and I can feel it, right? When Aretha Franklin sings Respect, I feel it, right? When the Sex Pistols, do their thing, I feel it. When, a modern songwriter, when, John Mayer sings a song, like I feel that. These are people who really put their truth and their heart into their craft. And that's what, yeah, right, exactly. So that's where I go, or that's where I, sort of tune in to the music. The genre is one thing, but it's really if I can feel it,
I feel you, man. I feel you. I think, we almost like we can't break orbit from this topic, right? Of feeling, and you don't have a way of injecting that emotion into somebody's brain, then you're going to fail. Now, of course, you know me, I'm a big proponent of using storytelling and structuring storytelling. And so I'm not saying don't make an effort in doing that. Absolutely, you should. Clearly, music is a hack, right? And hacks are a good thing. I'm all about hacks, right? The Storytelling for Action playbook has got over 300 hacks on how to apply storytelling to business. So I'm all about hacks. So music's definitely a hack that helps you inject that emotion into the brain. But obviously, when you start to combine these things together, there's even more power. Now, so you feel it, you like it, makes sense. I'm with you on that one. In fact, I've got a friend of mine who actually is a country musician. And when I met him, I discovered that he's a country musician, and I'm not a fan of country music. Just the country music I've heard doesn't press any buttons. Now, if you go back far enough and you kind of look at Johnny Cash and so on, you start to look at, you say, well, that's country. So, okay, well, so now we can start having a conversation about that, because if it triggers a feeling. Well, this friend recently recorded his first demo album and sent it to me. And I was like, wow, man, if all country music sounded like this, I don't think it would be getting the rap with people like me who it's not really sitting with. But it has to press those buttons. Now, in there, you touched on the electronica side of things. So and you've won some awards for your electronica, haven't you? Tell us about that.
Yes, I've had a long career in music. I've done tons and tons of music for film and TV, thousands of placements and backgrounds for TV shows and things like this. I won a big award years ago, Best Independent Electronic Artist in the World. So
Wow.
I'm not exactly sure if that's 100% true, but I'll take it, right? So yes, I've done that. I teach songwriting at a college over here near Seattle. I've produced tons of records, made an album of electronic versions of U2 cover songs with female singers. Love that band U2. And that thing's had way over 1 million plays, on the streamers. So you can find that if you like. I think it's called Electron Love Theory is the name of my band. So yeah, I mean, when I got to Seattle, I got a job as a music journalist for the big radio station that broke grunge music to the world. I've been making, living, breathing, listening to, and being around creators and music really my entire life, really since that fateful evening, in the cabin with the drum set.
Brilliant. Well, we've just flashed up on the screen that hopefully we've spelt it right, so folks can go and can check it out. So that's fantastic. So we've been alluding to the fact that we've got something to reveal and to share today, and this is what I love about having Jeff in the Go Narrative crew, and that is our ability to bring these elements together. And Jeff's storytelling is obviously includes music, but it goes beyond there, and therefore the Venn diagram of overlap between Matthew and Jeff is pretty big. Huge amount of respect for all forms of storytelling. So what we're going to share with you now is it's pretty short, so stick with it. It's and we'll talk about it. I'm not going to tell any more about it, but we're going to talk about it a little bit about it afterwards. But as you're watching this, I'll say one thing: imagine all of what you're hearing. And what you're seeing from a talking head perspective, imagine that's your customer talking about you, your products, and the world that you share together. So that's the one thing I would say keep in mind as we ramp this up, and super excited to share it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and let's take it away. Storytelling is important in business, just like it's important in real life. Story is important because it's how we make sense of the world around us. Storytelling is essential. Storytelling is what bonds us. Stories are how we make sense of the world. Every single human being constructs their entire world with story. Stories resonate with us. Without story, we can't communicate and we can't understand. Even a loving embrace and a hug that gives you a deep, warm feeling is giving you a deep, warm feeling because you're putting that into a story in your mind about what that means to you. Stories connect in a way unlike any other information. You will communicate in a way that people not only understand, but care about. A data sheet or a PowerPoint presentation that isn't fueled by story is nothing to care about. A great story affects you. A great story affects you. A storyteller will know that their message is connecting with an audience because that audience will lean in. And when people lean in, they want to know more, they want to engage, and they want to act. Storytelling is important in business, just like it's important in real life. Stories are literally the bridge between people. The bridge between people. Storytelling is what bonds us. stories are literally the bridge. Stories are how we make sense of the world. Fantastic. There we go. Docutronica. I got to say, Jeff, I got to tell you a couple of quick funny things. One is my kids absolutely love the mum doing sit-ups and kissing her baby on the head. They just love that bit. That was really funny. Both of them independently said they loved it. They were having an argument about who loved it first and who loved it more. And my favorite bit, actually, apart from the rocket, because I love space and science fiction and rockets and all that good stuff and science, is the two friends with the hugs, the end of the hug sequence with the two friends hugging. Even just watching that and hearing the music and hearing about the reason why the warm embrace matters to you isn't just the physical touch. I'm sure that anybody who studies touch would probably bring a whole bunch of additional value to this conversation, but it's also because of what story you've got in your head, what story you're living about who that person is, right? And a very simple demo of that would be hugging somebody that you love and being forced to hug somebody that you absolutely despise would be a pretty good example of the two different stories there. So super excited when we started working together on this stuff, Jeff. Love the idea that you conceived of. Tell us about the origin story for Docutronica and how it came about.
Mm-hmm. So I have always been interested not only in storytelling, but language itself and rhythm and the rhythm of language, right? And poetry and in things like this. And actually, way back in the day when I was doing lots of interviews with rock stars, I would record them on the phone, or not on the phone, on a little tape recorder. And then I'd go, come home and listen to it and type it up and things like that. And I was fascinated by the rhythms of the language. So I'm like, wow, maybe I could create rhythms based on language, just people talking normally. So I kind of did some experiments and I'm like, wow, this can be really cool. What if I created stories that were not my stories of people that have experiences that are not mine? Because as a songwriter, of which I've written, hundreds and hundreds of songs, all the stories in one way or another, even if they're third person, are mine. So I went out into the world and I interviewed people who had big stories to tell. I interviewed a heroin addict, a Buddhist mystic, a blind man, about their experiences. And I cut those interviews into, little sound bites, put them rhythmically into the music. Okay, did all kinds of treatments to it, things like this, and created sort of this non-linear story. So what happens is the story actually goes in deeper to the listener's heart and mind, because we essentially cut all the fluff out and get to the pieces that really matter, and it's all driven by the emotion of the speaker. I put that together, and that is what won that big contest, that big award. The story about the blind man and his experience of living life as a blind person and listening to music as a blind person. Created that. So I made that, and over the years I've done various, all kinds of various other projects. I call this Docutronica, where essentially I interview someone about something that matters to them. I find the nuggets, the gold, the pieces, rearrange it in a way that makes sense, put it together, and then, we add the video elements to this. And this becomes a very powerful experience where we feel what's happening rather than just listening to the language and trying to process it. It's a completely different experience. And then comes the memory. And then, as you know, Matt, comes the action, right? Stepping forward.
No, it's fantastic. You mentioned interviewing rock stars in there, Jeff. What rock stars have you? Which rock star have you interviewed that was the most fun or the most interesting?
Great question. Probably the most interesting one was the 90s band Everclear. You remember those guys?
Mm-hmm.
So I interviewed them before, like when they were just starting to go on the rise, right? And I went. They lived in Portland. I'm here. We're here in Seattle. So I drove down to Portland, and these three guys were living in a house together, trying to do their thing. And they're like, "Hey, man, you want to hear us play?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So we went down into their like cruddy little basement, and these guys played for me. They played a couple songs, and in the middle of this, like every other band out there, the main guys kind of do it this way, and that was great, whatever, all this kind of stuff. So I had this amazing experience with them playing a little concert for me in their basement. A few months later, not more than 6 months later, the radio station that I worked for produced a big concert, like a big outdoor festival type concert. In the meantime, this band Everclear went from very small band, maybe playing 100 to 100 people a night, to a major band with hits on the radio. They played in front of 20,000 people for the first time at this concert, of which I was working. I interviewed them right after they got off the stage. So I interviewed them first in the basement, playing for me, second time after they played for 20,000 people. And the main guy, Art Alexakis, gets off the stage, I just kind of stick the microphone in his face, and he's like, "Oh my God, that was just like Paradise City." And if you guys know the Guns N' Roses video of Paradise City, Axl Rose and Guns N' Roses are at their height, and they're playing in front of this enormous crowd. And, obviously Art was like, "Wow, that was just like that." So what an amazing experience for me to get these guys, at the very beginning of their journey, and then at this really high point. And let me just say, when this guy got off that stage, like, I don't know if you've had experiences with people where they are just beaming, like they are radiating energy. It's just like a tidal wave of joy. Like, I mean, this guy's dream just came true.
Wow.
And there I was to stick the microphone in his face. So we captured it.
Well, that's fun. I mean, thanks for sharing that. You go back to the docutronica. And you kind of touched on this a little bit, but tell me a bit more about what makes it so powerful. The video, the message, the story. What is it that kind of is this? What is the magic there? What's the secret sauce? Why is that working so well?
The secret sauce is the experiencer of this, the listener, the watcher, the audience is going to experience this production in a different way. When we talk directly to someone, it's like really our brain processing. Okay? When we listen to music, let's say without lyrics, it's more of an emotional connection, like we talked about before. So what we're doing here is we're melding these two sides, the intellect and the heart, that balance, where we get the key phrases, right, of the messaging, of the story, and we are amplifying that with emotion. If you noticed in there, Matt, you are passionate about telling stories. So when we did the interview for that passion came across. So that becomes not only the intellectual message, right, but also the emotional message. When you combine these two, that is where the connection happens. It's the bridge between people. Thus, the next step is they take action. They feel this. They want to move towards you. Whatever you've got going over there, you want to connect with that. So I think that is the magic, the secret sauce.
The combination of the head and the heart, right? The having those elements of fact and information that are also woven together within the emotional content. And it's funny because what are the models that I like to share when we talk about the customer journey and how you need to plan your content across that journey is, unsurprisingly, the beginning of that journey needs to be front loaded with emotionally charged content to get people to care, to take that next action, because if they don't take a next action, nothing's ever going to happen, right? And then as you move through that journey, the emotional side of the content can be dialed down, and then the detail, the rational, the more intellectual content can be dialed up. One of the problems that we often see our clients in general is there's often an investment in both ends of the spectrum, right? You've got a TV ad, highly emotional, and you've got the white papers. You've got the detailed case study, you know, blow by blow of exactly what happened or whatever it happens to be. And never the twain shall meet, right? Completely disconnected, and therefore a disconnected customer journey. One of the things that I love about Docutronica is it represents that mashup. It represents both the emotional and the detail. And you could arguably say, therefore, it would fit really well at the beginning of the middle of the journey. The fact is that actually it can work well at multiple places within the journey. Maybe not so much when you get all the way down to the close to the decision-making process where you're looking for that rational, checking the boxes. Does it have all the features I need? Is it exactly going to do what I need to do? I'm bought and sold on the fact I need to do something here, but are you going to help me? But I love that fact that Docutronica takes all that and puts it together, not least of which, for years and years, I've been a proponent of doing more with case studies, right? Case studies are frequently just that 1 or 2 page write-up. I mean, Christopher Trapp and I talked about this on his podcast, and he's like, don't give me 2 pages to read, right? And I would argue there's a time and a place, white paper, if you will, right? When you need to get down, you need to check some of the details. But you're never going to get somebody's attention with that type of content. The reality is, in your engagement with your customer, where you are looking to extract that traditional case study type of content, why stop there, right? Why not ask some more questions? Why not get more of an understanding of what they're passionate about? To your point about when when we created that demo product and you interviewed me and we chose questions where there's going to be some passion, right? So asking those kinds of questions to your customers, gathering that. Obviously, when we do that, we can build Docutronica. But even just holistically, when you think about what you then have content that you can use across that whole journey. You've got content that you can use in your advertising, on your landing page. You and I are working on a project right now where we're talking about that landing page, the Docutronica that sits at the top. It gets people's attention, and then they go down into the details that are below. And then you also have the details below, right? You've got the kind of the white paper-esque type of content. So Docutronica obviously helps bridge both of those worlds, and you know, the uses are manifold, right? Landing page, great example, right? Especially when you think about how SEO works nowadays. If you've got a nice video at the top of the page that's 30, 45 seconds long, gets people interested to take the next action. Jeff, you've talked about this today multiple times, taking the next action. I talk about storytelling for action all the time, because what's the point in doing any of this if there's not a next step? We don't have the luxury of just being pure entertainment like Hollywood. And this is one of my issues with trying to look to Hollywood and the hero's journey for business storytelling, is those don't have any more of an action to take than to get you to enjoy the movie, maybe buy some merchandising, right? I mean, that's pretty much it. But businesses have a lot of action that they need people to take, whether it's demoing a product, trying a product out, getting into a showroom, downloading a free trial, accessing a freemium option of a product, speaking to a sales rep, downloading that white paper or that case study. These are all actions, and we need to do this in business. And obviously,
right.
Docutronica really kind of represents that. But also events. Like imagine we're actually doing events again, right? Imagine a real in-person live event, and your CEO is about to come on stage, and you have this thumping music track starts playing, and then you hear these voices, and the voices, almost like lyrics, are your customers, and they're passionately talking about what they're trying to do, the change that they're taking action on in the world. And then the video comes up and it plays the video, and you have these beautiful visuals. You see the customers talking, and then the video fades out, the lights come up, and your executives out on stage. That's a really great way of doing it. And of course, there's a virtual example of that as well. But the uses of Docutronica are far and wide. Do you have other thoughts on how companies could use Docutronica or recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. So social media, right? Everybody's on social media. You get a great Docutronica piece and put that out there, it's going to be worlds ahead of most of the content that's going on out there. And it will be immediately engaging, immediately emotionally engaging. So you've got that kind of stuff. You've got all kinds of internal uses, right? What if you play this video before your meeting, just to remind people what they're doing, why they're doing it, what is going on here, right? Let's get psyched on this. All those kinds of things. You could play this, even with a sales meeting or something like that. There's plenty of reasons and ways to use Docutronica to help people engage. And it's really connection to take the next step, to feel that emotion.
That makes a lot of sense. And when a business is intentional about the stories that they're telling, when they're decoding the head and the heart, and they're making that investment, they're using things like our 3D framework, for example, to do that. We've got, one of our frameworks is this 3D framework, which stands for desire, difficulty, denouement, right? So desire, what does your customer want? Difficulty, what's standing in their way? And then denouement, how do they untangle the knot? That's a literal French word. Denouement translated to English means the untangling of the knot. Big fan of metaphors, similes, and anecdotes. Obviously, denouement really speaks to me in that. But when you're intentional about your storytelling, when you're figuring this stuff out, you're well on your way to actually being able to then take the next steps into a very robust Docutronica approach, where the content that you're going to get, the questions you're going to ask your customers, executives, to get those inputs are going to be really, really solid, really, really bulletproof. So, Jeff, I love Docutronica. I think it's fantastic. I think it speaks to me. It speaks to me in a very important way, and that is, there's so much content out nowadays, and this is content, right? That's a video we shared, and we'll share it again. We'll end on it as well, so everybody can have another look. But we struggle, whether it's Netflix and Disney and Amazon Prime and Stars and Paramount Plus and all these different channels, all this different content just flooding us, and then all the advertising we're getting flooded with, all the messages in social. We need ways to cut through. We need ways to get people's attention so that we can be heard and ultimately get people to take action so that we can sell more. So, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Absolutely.
I'm so excited to hear what people think and to get people's ideas about how they could use Docutronica. I would say it again, let us know. What do you think you could use Docutronica for in your business, right? Send us an email. You can hit us up on Twitter, LinkedIn. Jeff and I are both on LinkedIn as well. But go ahead and send us an email. How would you be able to use Docutronica? And then love to have a conversation with you about how you could apply it to your business. But yeah, thanks so much, Jeff. It's been really fun today. I'm gonna play us out again on the Docutronica demo that we've got here, because I think it's a lot of fun, and it'll give everybody a good reminder there of what we've been talking about for the past 44 minutes and 41 seconds. So brilliant. Thanks everybody for listening as well. Really excited to hear what your ideas are about how you could use it. Jeff, thanks for joining. Thanks everybody for listening, and have a great day and a great week. Storytelling is important in business, just like it's important in real life. Story is important because it's how we make sense of the world around us. Storytelling is essential. Storytelling is what bonds us. Stories are how we make sense world. Every single human being constructs their entire world with story. Stories resonate with us. Without story, we can't communicate and we can't understand. Even a loving embrace and a hug that gives you a deep, warm feeling is giving you a deep, warm feeling because you're putting that into a story in your mind about what that means to you. Stories connect in a way unlike any other information. You will communicate in a way that people not only understand, but care about. A data sheet or a PowerPoint presentation that isn't fueled by story is nothing to care about. A great story affects you. A great story affects you. A storyteller will know that their message is connecting with an audience because that audience will lean in. And when people lean in, they want to know more, they want to engage, and they want to act. Storytelling is important in business just like it's important in real life. Stories are literally the bridge between people. The bridge between people. Storytelling is what bonds us. Stories are literally the bridge. Stories are how we make sense of the world.